Bonjour Beffen, bonjour Loga, bonjour Johanna,
Bonjour,
ça va?
oui, ça va.
Super, ok. Ça va Loga?
Oui, ça va. Et
Super,
vous, ça va?
ça va très bien, merci. Comment tu vas Johanna?
Ah, ça va bien à toi?
Ça va, super, merci. Ok, on va attendre un petit peu, hein. So we're going to wait for a couple minutes again for most people to join, and then we'll be able to start the class. Bonjour Bella,
Bonjour.
ça va? Super, ok. Well, I think that we're going to be able to start off. Okay. So the others will join a bit later. It's okay. Okay, so as always, I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation for today's class. Ok. Donc la dernière fois, on a parlé de la vie quotidienne, ok, de la routine. Aujourd'hui, on a une question. C'est tu es libre aujourd'hui? So does anybody know what's tu es libre? So that's a part of the question. Does anybody know what it could possibly mean?
Like, are you available?
It's are you available? And if you were to translate it, like strictly translate the word libre, so it's free.
Mm,
But in the sense, it's like, are you available?
mhm.
Et aujourd'hui, so I assume that most of you know what aujourd'hui means, okay? Everybody know was aujourd'hui. Oui, très bien, ok. Alors, aujourd'hui, donc, we're going to review a couple of things that we saw on Tuesday, okay? So we're still going to talk about the preposition. We are also going to talk about the reflexive verb, les verbes réfléchis, okay? On a un exemple de verbe réfléchi ici avec se lever et aussi se coucher, ok? Et on va parler du vocabulaire du quotidien. Donc ça, c'est pour la séance de mardi. Other than that, donc pour ce qu'on va apprendre aujourd'hui, on va parler des horaires, ok? Donc les horaires, on verra ça en détail. We'll see that in detail, ok? Les prépositions, once again. And we're going to talk for the first time about the second group verbs, because this can be a little bit tricky, okay? And for the cultural aspect, we're going to talk about France in general, okay? So if you want to take notes, and you didn't have time to finish taking some notes, just tell me, and I can switch back to the R positive, okay? To the previous slide. So here's the table of contents for today's class. So once again, we're starting off with the révision. Then we're going to move on to, well, les horaires. So we are going to talk about les jours et les heures, okay? Et ensuite, on va parler un peu de grammaire et de conjugaison. So a little bit about grammar and conjugation. Then we're going to talk about or how we could practice the elements that we saw today. Okay? Des questions pour l'instant? Pas de questions, non? Ok. Alors, on avance du coup. Comment ça va aujourd'hui? Vous allez bien? Tout le monde va bien? Oui. Alors, Johanna, comment ça va?
Ça va bien et toi?
Ça va bien, merci. Est-ce que tu peux demander à quelqu'un d'autre dans la classe?
Euh, Bethan, comment ça va?
Oui, ça va bien. Merci. Loga, comment ça va?
Oui, ça va bien, merci. Euh, Joanna,
Bella is left.
Bella, comment ça va?
Très bien, merci.
Ok, super. Bon, on avance du coup. Alors, on avait parlé en premier des moments de la journée. Ok. Est-ce que quelqu'un peut me rappeler comment est-ce qu'on appelle ce moment-là de la journée? Donc le premier, celui-ci.
Le matin,
Le matin, oui, très bien. Donc ça, c'est le matin. Ensuite, on a celui d'après celui-ci.
Le midi,
Le midi, très bien, le gars, ok. Donc le midi. Est-ce que quelqu'un se souvient d'une expression pour parler du temps de midi? So we talked about the expressions and the different ways you could talk about le midi. Does anybody remember some of them? Nobody? Donc il y a par exemple entre midi et deux. Ok. Il y en a plusieurs. There are several expressions to talk about that time frame. It really depends on the place you are in France. It's part of the French variety and the differences between certain regions in France. Ok. Ensuite, on a qu'est-ce que c'est ça? C'est quoi? Celui-ci. Fan, peut-être? Tu te souviens?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Tu peux essayer. You can try.
Um,
Hmm.
I don't know.
You don't know. So it starts with après. Ok.
Oh, après-midi.
Après-midi. Oui, très bien. A quick little dissection of the word après-midi. It's basically the same thing as in English. You have after and you have noon. Same thing as in English. You would just have that little, so we call that un tiret, which is often frequent in the French writing when, for example, you mix two words together that make one. Well, the same thing here, for example, with après-midi. Okay, and the last one, le dernier,
soir,
le soir,
le
oui,
soir.
le soir. Si on veut en rajouter un, on pourrait dire aussi la nuit. Ok, ok, très bien. Alors, là, on a quatre moments. Donc, on a le matin, le midi, l'après-midi, le soir, la nuit. I forgot to put the article before. Okay, you can't really see the article right now. Donc l'après-midi, le soir, la nuit. Ok. Donc on a ces quatre moments. So be careful with the article. Okay. So here, can anyone try to remember to the class? So what's the meaning of that little article here? Le.
Is it just the?
It's the,
No.
yeah. So be careful. It's the, not a. What would
Mm.
be the French for ou an? An idea maybe? Bethan, Bella, Loga? Comment est-ce qu'on... So how would you say a or an?
Un ou une.
Un ou une, yeah. And what you have to be careful about is the gender of the noun that it's going to be followed by, okay? Here, we can see that for the vast majority of the moments of the day, it's going to be masculine, le matin, le midi. Alors, l'après-midi, this is something interesting because l'après-midi is both feminine and masculine. It's one of the few words in French that can be both feminine and masculine. You may be wondering, why is that case? Because it's a mix of two words. The first one, midi, which is masculine, and après, okay? So you can say either un après-midi or une après-midi. It can be both masculine or feminine. However, if we look at the article here, it's always going to be the L apostrophe because you have a vowel at the beginning of the word, okay? So this is a curious case that is very rare in French words where a noun is both masculine and feminine, okay? Alors, j'ai une question. Alors, c'est quoi votre moment préféré de la journée? Tout le monde comprend préféré? Oui. Everybody understand the word préféré? It's, again, very close from English. Okay. Donc, on va faire un exemple. Johanna, c'est quoi ton moment préféré de la journée?
Mon moment préféré de la journée est est l'après-midi.
Et l'après-midi? Très bien, ok. Et toi, Bethan, c'est quoi ton moment préféré de la journée?
Mon moment préféré de la journée est le soir.
Le soir, ok, très bien. Et Loga, pour toi, c'est quoi ton moment préféré de la journée?
Mon moment préféré de la journée est le matin.
Le matin, ok. So, everybody has a different opinion for now, ok. Et on finit avec Bella, c'est quoi ton moment préféré de la journée?
C'est le soir.
Le soir, ok. So, we can see that in the class we have a very diverse point of view, ok. Très bien, super, merci. Donc, préféré is preferred, okay. So you're often going to see words that end with that E accent aigu, okay. Again, we can talk about the phonetics here. This is the sound E, okay. Remember that with the accent aigu, you can see that the accent is rising. Okay, so it's most likely here because it's mirrored. So it's a rising accent. Okay. Très bien, super, merci. Alors, ensuite, on va parler du coup des verbes pronominaux ou qu'on appelle aussi les verbes réfléchis. Ok. So, c'est quoi les verbes pronominaux? Eh ben, c'est par exemple se lever, c'est par exemple se coucher, ok? So what do those verbs have that is different from others?
They have s in front of it.
Yeah. So what those words are called, it's like the reflexive pronouns. I think that they're different in English than in French. In that case, we have, for example, if we look at the two tables here, we have me, te, ce, nous, vous, ce. Okay. Can someone try to remember me? So why would we have those verbs? Why would they have the ce before them? Any idea? We took an example. For example, with the we had an image, or we had two images of someone shaving and someone being shaved. So those little pronouns are going to be very important to give informations about who is receiving the actions of the verb. In that case, se lever, okay. C'est quoi se lever? What does it mean, se lever?
To get up.
To get up or to wake up. It's both, okay. Donc se lever. Par exemple, on a je me lève. Okay. If we had, for example, only je lève, that would be different. The verb lever is like hard to kind of translate into English, but it's both lift and also rise. So if you say, like, for example, je lève, it's I rise or I lift, which isn't the meaning that we are looking for here. So we have to be careful to add the pronouns before. For example, je me lève, okay? But what about the conjugation of those two verbs? So here, can someone try to remember me what their group is here? Donc pour se lever et se coucher. Is it the first group? Donc le premier groupe, le deuxième groupe ou le troisième groupe?
The first group.
Le premier groupe, oui. Et du coup, Bethan, would the conjugation change because of the pronouns, or would it still be conjugated the same way?
The same.
Yes, it's the same. So we follow the same pattern as always. So here we have the pattern of the first group, okay? Nous nous levons, vous levez, il, elle se lève, okay? So it's fairly simple. Same thing for se coucher. Tiens, Loga, comment est-ce que tu dirais le deuxième verbe ici? Le verbe se coucher.
Je me couche.
Je me couche, oui, très bien.
Euh,
Ensuite,
Tu t'es couché.
so the pronunciation stays the same. It's tu te couches.
Ok.
Ensuite,
Elle se couche.
couche aussi, très bien.
Nous nous couchons.
Couchons, très bien. Ensuite,
Vous. Is it couché or is
coucher. Coucher,
Couche.
très bien, oui. So why is it couché? It's because the E and Z together is pronounced E.
Ok.
Et le dernier, il, elle se
I don't know.
You can look at the other table, which has a pattern.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
So it's basically the same way than those three persons.
Couche.
Oui, voilà, couche, tout simplement. Il, elle se couche.
Couche. Okay.
Because the ending here is fully mute, okay?
Okay.
Très bien. Donc on peut voir ici, so we can see that there's the same pattern, whether it's a reflexive verb or if it's not a reflexive verb. So it doesn't really matter. Keep in mind that you can find different pronouns depending on who is receiving the action. For example, if it's like, for example, that you are like putting someone to bed, you would say je le couche, okay? That's something that is a bit tricky yet, okay? Alors, on a deux questions. Alors, tu fais quoi le matin? Toi, tu fais quoi le matin, Loga?
It means what I did this morning.
So it's not what you did in the morning because we have the present tense here.
Okay.
It's what, in the sense, it's like, what do you usually do in the morning?
Take a coffee.
Okay, alors, so there's,
Je bois un café.
je bois un café, très bien. You use the verb boire, which is more like I'm drinking a coffee, but you could also say I'm taking a coffee, which if you said like je prends un café.
Okay. Je prends un
Mais-
café.
Très bien, je bois, je prends un café. Ok, très bien. Et toi, Johanna, tu fais quoi généralement le matin?
Je mange le petit déjeuner.
Je mange le petit déjeuner. Très bien. Très bien. On passe à la deuxième question. Tu fais quoi le soir? Tu fais quoi le soir, Bella? Si tu peux nous entendre. Oui.
On regarde la télé.
Je regarde la télé. Ok, très bien. Et toi, Bethan, tu fais quoi le soir?
How would you put together I like to go?
So I like to go is j'aime aller
Okay. So, j'aime aller au cinéma.
au cinéma. Très bien, super. Très bonne utilisation de la préposition au. Good use of the preposition au, okay? Because cinema is masculine. So you would say au cinéma. Très bien. Okay. Keep in mind that it's the same thing as in English. When you have a conjugated verb, if we take the example of the sentence that Bethan made, j'aime aller, you have firstly a conjugated verb, which is aimer in the sentence. You can't have another conjugated verb here. In that case, it would be followed by a gerund, I don't know how to really pronounce it, or a, which is like the infinitive version of a verb. For example, aller. Okay. So you have to keep in mind the infinitive of those verbs. Okay. Ok, bah super, merci. Alors, on avance. Ok, alors, je vous ai dit qu'on allait parler de, alors, des jours et de l'heure. Ok. Donc, pour parler de l'heure, on va devoir un peu reparler des chiffres. Ok. So in order to talk about the hour in general, we need to talk a little bit about the numbers in general. I think I told you previously that we had I think it's a different way to tell the time in French, or at least how to like count the time in general. Does anyone remember maybe what I said about the time? No. So I said that, for example, if we take the time afternoon, so I assume that in most countries you go back and you tell the time just like a clock. So you have a 12-hour kind of thing with AM and PM. It's different in French. Most people count until 24. So for example, we would say 8 heures du soir. Okay, so 8 p.m., 8 heures du soir. We would often say 20 heures. Okay, so that's most likely what you hear in France. I think that most people are used to tell the time this way because it's a little bit more precise to us, I think. So in order to tell the time, it's fairly easy. So pour l'heure, pour ce qui est de l'heure, on doit seulement savoir compter jusqu'à 23, okay? So in order to tell the hour, we just have to know how to count until 23, okay? Which I assume that most of you know how, okay? Does anyone have a trouble maybe to count until 23? No? Okay. That will be good for the later part of the class then. And then, how would you count up for the minute, pour les minutes, okay? So you just have to count until 59, okay? C'est quoi, comment on dit 59? How would you say 59 in French? Does anybody remember?
59.
59. Très bien, oui. So when we talked about the numbers in general, we talked about like the hard stuff. For example, with like 70, 90, which had like a specific way to count, which was a bit tricky. Here is not the case because we count until 59. So in that case, 59, okay? Donc là, on a par exemple, for every dozen, we have 30, 40, okay? Be careful, the QU, so that symbol of letters is often pronounced as, can someone, or does someone know how this Q and U is pronounced together in French?
Like,
Like
yeah.
go ahead.
Whoever wants to try, okay?
like 40.
So it's like a K. Yeah, it's K. Usually in English, you would say quarant. I think that even, well, in Spanish too, if some of you have learned Spanish, we would say cuarenta. Here, the Q and U in French is always pronounced as the letter K. So just a K. Donc 40, 50, okay? Alors, on va faire un petit exercice là-dessus. Just another thing that you have to keep in mind is, for example, just like in English, you wouldn't say like 0 o'clock. It doesn't make much sense. On dit minuit, ok? Et pour 12 heures, on dit midi. So, do you kind of see something that's going on in the way it's written here? Like, for example, the word minuit. Do you notice something special about the way it's spelled? No? So, most French is like very constructed around the Latin language. In that case, we have like two roots, if you will. It's me, then you have nuit. Okay. Me, it means health in most words when you would see it here. And nuit, so you know what nuit means, okay? So it's the night. Same thing here. We have midi, okay? So same thing, you have health. And D means la journée, the day, okay? So it's you can see that there's sort of a collage, if you will, of different words and different roots that form a common thing. Okay? Donc on a minuit et midi. Ça marche? Et pour ce qui est de comment on dit l'heure, ok? On dirait, alors il est, ainsi de suite. On a un exemple, par exemple, il est 23h59. So that is a little bit unique. You wouldn't say like for example here, il est 23h59 minutes. You would simply say il est 23h59. Ok? On peut prendre comme exemple ces 2 heures-là. Bah tiens, Loga, il est quelle heure ici? So are you with us, Loga? Yeah. Il est quelle heure ici, là? Mhm. Can you hear us, Loga? Not sure that you can hear us. If you want to type your answer in the chat, you're most welcome to. Bethan, peut-être? Il est quelle heure ici? Sur celui-ci, là.
Il est 14.
So it's not 14, c'est 15.
15.
15, oui. Et pour les minutes?
C'est 35.
35, oui. Donc tu dirais, il est 15h35. It's, as you can see, it's fairly simple. I think that, no problem for your microphone, Logan, don't worry about it. So it's fairly simple. There's also like some people may try to complicate things and say, for example, il est 16h moins 5. So it would be like the English model when you say, like, for example, it's a quarter to 4. However, I think that most people would simply say il est 15h35. Il est 15h55. Okay. You don't have to complicate things by counting like the English way. Yeah. So be simple and just say, for example, here, il est 15h35. Okay. Alors, on a 3 exemples ici. Alors, le premier, le deuxième et le troisième. Donc, pour le premier, celui-ci, là, il est quelle heure? Logas, tu veux écrire dans le chat? If you want to write it in the chat, you can. Or if your microphone is working. Johanna, pour le premier, celui-ci, là, il est quelle heure?
That's a good question.
Donc,
Because you wouldn't say minuit, because it's not midnight exactly, right? Minuit 5?
si, tu dirais minuit. So,
Ah,
lo-
minuit 5.
minuit,
5.
minuit 5. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Loga wrote it in the chat too. It's
Okay.
minuit 5. For minuit and midi, you wouldn't say like minuit heure, because minuit and midi aren't hours. It's kind of a moment, if you will. It's not like an hour. So you would say minuit 5, fairly simple. So it's not just like minuit doesn't mean like the exact moment.
Okay.
The time is like the 00. Ok, très bien. Super, merci Johanna. Pour le deuxième, c'est alors c'est un peu la même chose. Bafen, tu vas essayer pour le deuxième?
De 14.
It's above. So, on a 13, 14,
Aucun.
15. Ok. Donc il est
15.
15,
15.
15h15.
15h15.
15h15. Yep. Ok. Et pour le dernier, Bella, so you have the hardest to do. How would you tell that? Il est quelle heure ici?
22h25. Attends, 22h26.
26, oui. 22h26. Très bien, super Bella. So keep in mind like the little structure of the sentence that you have to make in order to tell the time. And the question which would be asked. Okay? Il est quelle heure? Il est, par exemple, il est 15h40. Ok? Des questions? Pas de questions, non. Do you need time to write, Bethan, or are you done? Ok. Alors, on arrive maintenant sur... Alors, on a répondu à quelle heure? Ok. Maintenant, on va répondre à quel jour. Ok. Alors, so do most of you knew how to, or knew what the days of the week were? Yes or no? Partially, maybe. So, okay. So here's a reminder. Qui est-ce qui peut le lire? Johanna, tu peux lire peut-être? Alors, on commence ici.
Oui. Lundi,
Lundi, ok.
mardi,
Ensuite, mardi.
mercredi,
Mhm.
jeudi,
Oui.
vendredi, samedi, dimanche.
Samedi, dimanche. Ok, très bien. Alors, maybe something you've noted is the return of the structure. Here you have D. I told like a bit earlier that D meant day in Latin. So here it's like lundi, mardi, mercredi, jeudi, vendredi, samedi, dimanche. Okay. So it's something that really is repeating itself. Okay. I've also put next to it the articles that you would see, for example, with the days of the week. Donc, la question, ça va être quel est le genre des jours de la semaine? Est-ce que c'est féminin ou masculin?
Masculin.
C'est masculin, donc oui, on dirait tout le temps le lundi, le mardi, le mercredi, etc. Ok? Alors, bah tiens, on peut poser une autre question. On est quel jour aujourd'hui? So what's the question here? On est quel jour aujourd'hui?
Le jeudi.
Très bien, le gars. On est jeudi, ok? Donc c'est jeudi aujourd'hui. Et très bien. Et alors, I'm going to ask another question. Alors, so be mindful that I'm changing the tense here. Alors, c'était quel jour hier? So what does hier means? Any idea?
Yesterday.
Hier, c'est yesterday, ok. Donc, bah tiens, Loga peut-être? C'était quel jour hier?
Mercredi.
Mercredi, très bien. Et dernière question. Alors, ce sera quel jour? Demain. C'est quoi demain? Logiquement,
Is that tomorrow?
tomorrow, ok. Donc, ce sera quel jour demain? Bethan?
Le vendredi?
Ce sera vendredi, le vendredi. Ok, très bien. You can keep, you can write or keep in mind those three words. Hier, aujourd'hui, which has a kind of a weird spelling. Okay. Here you can see like the for the word aujourd'hui, kind of the quintessential Latin influence on the French language, because you have like a combination of oui and au jour. So it's kind of a combination between three words. Donc, if we literally translate what aujourd'hui means, it's like today is the day of, okay, or yeah, means kind of that translation, if you will. So it's kind of a weird spelling and a weird structure for a word. Okay.
Can I ask,
Oui.
what is jour?
Jour. Donc jour, c'est day. Or you have like, for example, jour, which is day, et journée, which is also day, but jour is like more of the scientific way of talking about like the day, and journée is it's more like something like kind of your daily life, daily thing. Yeah. So jour is day. Mhm.
X.
And it's also like the date of the week. Can mean a couple things. Okay. D'autres questions? Other questions, maybe? Pas de questions? Ok, très bien. I think that we're going to skip the pause. Or if someone wants to do a break, maybe. Une pause, non. Okay. On passe alors. If anyone has to leave the class for a temporary pause, they can just leave. It's okay. So we're going to talk about for the first time les verbes du deuxième groupe. On n'a pas encore parlé des verbes du deuxième groupe. Pourquoi? So why? I think it's one of the trickier ones because as you may see, we have two verbs here and we're going to see in detail why they are tricky, okay? Alors, on commence avec une question. C'est quoi le groupe du verbe finir? Donc, qu'est-ce que c'est quoi finir? Ça veut dire quoi? What does it mean, finir? Any idea of the meaning of the word, the
To
verb?
finish,
Finish, yeah. Or to end.
to end.
Finish or to end, ok. Et alors, Johanna, c'est quel groupe? Le premier, le deuxième ou le troisième?
Troisième?
Alors, c'est
I
le
don't know.
deuxième.
Deuxième.
Bien essayé. On reverra ensuite. Et alors, pourquoi est-ce que c'est le deuxième? So, why is finir part of the second group? If you recall, when we talked about the classification of verbs in the French conjugation, we said that there was three groups. The first group was for the verbs that were ending in ER. However, we also saw that there was like kind of some irregularity. So we have a rule that is most of the time correct. However, there are some verbs and words that break those same rules. So we had, for example, the verb aller. Aller. You see that the ending is ER. So you might think to yourself, well, because it's ER, I know that it's a first group. But it's not. And why is it not part of the first group? Because simply put, the verb of the first group would be regular. If we take another example of a first group verb that is regular, we have, for example, manger, which is to eat. Manger is regular. Why is it regular? Because you would say mange, 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 mangeons, manger, mange. Okay, it's regular. It follows the same pattern with the root that stays the same, and then you add the endings. However, for aller, this is very different. It's not je alle, tu alles, it's je vais, tu vas, il va, nous allons, etc., etc. So, by that definition, the verb aller isn't part of the first group because it's irregular. It doesn't follow the same pattern as we saw with manger. And to that, we have a irregular group. So does anybody remember what's the irregular group? Is it le premier, le deuxième ou le troisième? Which group is the irregular one?
Is it the troisième?
Le troisième, oui. Donc, so aller is a part of the third group. because it's irregular. However, now we have another group. Le deuxième. Okay. Pour le deuxième, on a par exemple finir. So if we take the same logic as the first group, le deuxième is still a regular group. So in that case, we have to find the ending that is really reoccurring with the verb of the second group, and that is IR. Okay? Donc, so finir is a part of the second group. So I'm going to write the conjugation for finir. So it follows the pattern, the corresponding pattern of the second group, which is je finis, tu finis, il, elle finit. And then we have something that is a bit different that we haven't seen so far. Nous finissons, vous finissez, il, elle finissent. Ok. Donc là, on a quelque chose de différent. It's very different. We have the ONS that is kind of a sign, if you will, of the nous, but we don't have just the ONS. We also have the ESS, the S. Oh no. Finissons. Okay. We have the double SONS, deux SONS. Same thing here. Same thing here. Here's the pattern. So if you want to write down what's the pattern of the second group, it's, I'll write it here. It's for the first person, S, S, T, and then it gets tricky. S, 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 C, and S. Okay. So that's the pattern of the second group. Great. So now we know that IR is a second group because it follows that same pattern. It also ends with IR, IR. So it's a second group. Okay. Alors maintenant, on a le verbe partir. Does anybody know what partir means? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? C'est quoi?
To go.
To go. It's not really to go. To go is aller, but it's close to go.
Maybe to left.
To leave, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
To leave, partir. However, you may encounter that verb, for example, if you would say like, well, it's the same thing in English. You can say like, I am leaving for Paris today, which is kind of a synonym to the use of I am going to Paris today. In that case, it can mean both, just as English. Okay. Alors, on a le verbe partir. Est-ce que partir est du premier, du deuxième ou du troisième groupe?
Deuxième group?
Deuxième groupe, okay. Alors, so we're going to check if it's part of the second group. So if it's from the second group, it should follow that very pattern, okay? And we're going to see if we have the same pattern. So for the first person, c'est je how would you say that, Joanna? Je.
parti.
However, it's different. It's je pars, okay? Then we have tu pars, okay? So we have the same pattern so far. Il, elle part. And then what would be if we follow the pattern? What would you say?
Nous partons.
Nous partons. So it's not this. You wouldn't say nous partons. You would say nous partons.
Mm.
Then you would say vous partez. Il, elle partent. Okay. So according to the conjugation here, is partir following that pattern?
No.
No. So it's not part of the second group, even though it has the ER. So we know that partir is in the third group. And because it's part of the third group, it would be irregular. In that case, it is irregular with the plural persons. Okay, donc avec nous, vous, il, elle. But it still follows a pattern that is common in third groups when you start with S, S, T, O, N, S, E, Z, E, N, T. Okay. So how would you know if a second or a verb that ends with ER is part of the second group? Well, if it follows that very same pattern. In that case, partir doesn't follow that pattern, so it's not part of the second group. Okay. So does anybody have a question about that? Pas de question? So I assume that it's a strange notion when you come from English, let's say, to have like that classification of verbs into groups, having them to follow a pattern of conjugation depending on the persons. And well, it's a very tricky part of learning French. Even for like, for example, for French children. It's something that we used to do, or we used to have nightmares about the conjugations and the test about conjugation. And well, imagine that we're strictly talking about the present simple so far. And we haven't even talked about, like, for example, the times of or the tenses of the past, which when we're going to talk about it is a bit, which is way harder than English. If you wonder why the past tenses are so much harder in French than in English, just think about the fact that, for example, you have the preterite simple, preterite simple. In French, we have 3 different tenses that are talking or that corresponds to the preterite simple. We have l'imparfait, le passé simple, et le passé composé. So yeah, I think that French conjugation in general is way harder than English conjugation. Okay. Est-ce que vous avez des questions? Do you have any questions about the second group or conjugation in general? Non? Okay, super. Again, if you have some questions later in the class, you can ask me. Okay. So, here's the complete table here. So I've put a little square with à mémoriser with the pattern that you have to follow. There's also another example of a IR verb, which is in part of the second group. Do you know what dormir means? Dormir?
To sleep?
To sleep, yeah. Dormir is irregular because it doesn't follow the same pattern. You wouldn't say, like, for example, nous dormissons. You would say nous dormons. Donc, troisième groupe. OK. Alors, on va parler maintenant des prépositions. Alors, on a déjà parlé des prépositions. We already talked about preposition, especially when we talked about vacances et voyages. We used to talk about, for example, a, o, and we had another one, which was en. Okay. Here, we're strictly going to talk about prepositions, but in order to like it's close to the prepositions of places. So in that case, we have two examples of places. So we have travail et université. Okay? Université, vous comprenez, oui, université, hein. Mais travail, c'est quoi travail? So the image can kind of give you information about that.
To work?
So it's not to work. If it was to work, it would be travailler. Travail, it's close. It's not to work, it's simply work. Travail here. So if we talk again about strict grammar, travail is a noun. Okay, c'est un nom. Un nom commun. Common noun. So we can have, like, for example, an article before. Est-ce que travail, c'est masculin ou féminin? Est-ce que c'est masculin ou féminin?
Masculine?
C'est masculin. Et donc, quel article est-ce que tu utiliserais, toi, Johanna?
Au travail?
Par exemple, tu pourrais dire au travail pour la préposition. Et pour l'article, est-ce que tu te souviens des articles?
Le travail?
Le travail, oui, très bien. Mais tu as déjà répondu avec la question sur les prépositions. Très bien. Donc, c'est le travail, c'est masculin. Et quelle préposition on utilise? Du coup, on utilise au. Puisque, on le rappelle, au, c'est pour le masculin. Ok. Ensuite, on a université. Alors, même chose. Université, c'est un... Comment? So, quel article est-ce que vous mettrez ici pour université? Est-ce que vous mettez le? Est-ce que vous mettez la? Est-ce que vous mettez les? Beffen peut-être? Ou loga? Ou même bella?
Is it l'université? So le with the accent?
Oui, très bien. So be careful. It's not an accent, even if it looks like it. It's so we call it an apostrophe, an apostrophe thing. Donc c'est très bien. C'est l'université. Mais est-ce que c'est masculin ou est-ce que c'est féminin?
Feminine.
C'est féminin, oui. Donc, en fait, technically, it's like la. But in order to make it easier to pronounce, we say l'université. Okay, très bien. So what preposition would you use then if it's feminine? Quelle préposition est-ce que tu utiliserais, Bethan? Est-ce que tu dirais à la, à, allô?
Alle.
So with this one?
Yeah.
Oui, à l'université. Très bien. Okay, last question about that. So, in what case would we use this preposition? Donc, alors, I'm going to highlight this specific preposition. So, in what case would we use it?
Like a plural noun?
Plural noun. And what about the gender? Is it for masculine, feminine, or both, maybe?
Maybe both? I'm not
It's
sure.
both, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Les deux. Because we talked about it, for example, for nouns, we have a specific rule, or that's what that's what I was taught when I was a child. It's like there's like a common saying that says about this relation in grammar. It says like the masculine takes over the feminine sort of way, or the masculine dominates the feminine. I know, it's kind of weird. So it's both, but at the same time, it's kind of neutral in a way. It's masculine, even though it's feminine and masculine. Okay. So in that case, it's just for plural noun in general. Okay. Alors, on a un autre exemple à la bibliothèque. C'est quoi la bibliothèque?
A library?
Library, yeah. And c'est quoi librairie en français? Qu'est-ce que c'est librairie en français? An idea, maybe? It isn't the same thing. Donc la librairie is a bookstore. So be careful if you like plan on going to une librairie, imagining that it's like a library. It isn't. It's a bookstore. Something like that is common with, like, for example, words that were borrowed from French or from English that just kind of lose their meaning through the years and the centuries. Okay. Okay. Alors, so before we do the final activity, I'm going to ask a last question about the preposition. So, basically, so the question would be, tu vas où? Okay. So I want you to pay attention about that little pronom relatif. Okay. So what does that little word here means? Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? C'est quoi où? Avec l'expression, par exemple, tu vas où?
Where are you?
Oui.
Where?
Alors, où, simply où, is where.
Okay.
Ok. Donc très bien. Where. Ensuite, on a un verbe. Va. Quel est le verbe ici? C'est un verbe. Alors, qu'on utilise beaucoup. So it's irregular. It should be in the first group, but it is in the third group. So we talked about it a little bit today.
Is it you go?
Oui, tu vas. Le verbe ici, c'est aller. Ok. Ok.
Mm.
Alors, très important, où, where. Donc, where are you going? Alors, tu vas où? What would be the possible answer to that question? Comment est-ce qu'on pourrait répondre à la question tu vas où?
Je vais à la bibliothèque.
Par exemple, je vais à la bibliothèque. Je vais la noter. Tu vas où? Je vais à la bibliothèque. What I want you to pay attention to is like the structure of the question. I think I mentioned it in the beginning of the course, like the absence of inversion between like the auxiliary and the pronoun or the subject. In that case, it is very straightforward. In French, we used to have that inversion. Some people still ask questions with the inversion of the subject and the auxiliary. However, in most cases, you wouldn't see an inversion. So you would simply say, tu vas où? The version of the question tu vas où with the inversion would be où vas-tu? However, most people wouldn't say où vas-tu. They would say tu vas où? Because I think that I assume that it's the same case with English. Languages tend to kind of simplify over the time. In that case, it is way easier to say tu vas où. So most people say tu vas où. Okay. Then you have the answer je vais à la bibliothèque. Okay. Des questions là-dessus? Any questions about well, a question answer? No? Ok, très bien. Alors, on arrive du coup sur l'activité finale. Ok. So for the final activity, there's a question. Tu fais quoi samedi? So, samedi. So what day is samedi? C'est quel jour samedi?
Saturday?
Donc c'est dans le futur. So it's in the future. Okay? I think it was 2 classes ago. We talked about le futur proche. So we're going to try to use again the futur proche. Okay. Est-ce que quelqu'un se souvient comment on utilise le futur proche? So does anybody remember how we use the futur proche?
Like when I was speaking about myself, je vais, and then the infinitive form of the verb.
Oui, très bien, c'est ça. So it's close to the use in English, for example, with I am going to. Next, you have like the infinitive, or yeah, I think it's the infinitive in English. So same thing here. You have an example. Samedi matin, je vais. So what I'm expecting here is like an action, a verb at the infinitive. Et le soir, je vais, same thing here, a verb at the infinitive. You can add more stuff. For example, you can add a preposition with a place. So for example, if you're going somewhere, you can say that. You can add some moments. For example, le matin, le soir aussi, okay? Ou même une heure. Donc, let's say that you have like an appointment or a rendezvous at 3 p.m. You can add that to your sentence, okay? I've put as a sort of reminder the conjugation of the verb aller because, well, it's a bit tricky, okay? And also partir. Okay, alors, so I'm going to do the example. I'm going to fill in the blanks. Alors, samedi matin, je vais faire du vélo et le soir, je vais au cinéma. Okay. So we had two actions here. It was faire du vélo, donc faire. Ensuite, je vais aller au cinéma. Ok. Donc c'est le verbe aller. Donc, I assume that most of you are ready by now about the sentence that they want to make. Yeah. So who wants to try first? Qui veut commencer?
I can
Joanna,
try.
ok. Je t'écoute.
Samedi matin, je vais faire du sport et
Très bien.
le soir, je vais. Oh, how do I say like meet my friends? Meet
So,
or see my friends, something like
yeah,
that.
well, what you would say in French is like, I'm going to see my friend. Je vais voir mon ami. The verb for see is voir. Okay. So in that case, you would say je vais voir mon ami. I think that in French we don't really use the meaning of meeting a friend. Or I can take another example. For example, visit someone.
Opposite, okay.
We don't use those verbs. I think that you would say je vais voir, or maybe je retrouve. Je vais retrouver, par exemple. Retrouver is kind of closer to the meaning of meeting. It's also like kind of finding. The meaning is sort of finding, so it's closer to meeting. However, the most common use in French is voir. For example, je vais voir des amis. Okay.
Je vais voir des amis, did you say?
So
Or-
depends on which who you will see.
Okay.
So who are you going to see?
Just one friend, for example.
So depending on the gender, it's either.
Okay.
So what could be the two choices you have depending on the gender?
Masculin or féminin.
So
Je
what?
vais voir
Mhm.
mon ami.
Oh, so it's correct. What you're saying is you're using a possessive adjective, mon, which is the equivalent of my, which is correct.
Okay.
You could also have said un ou une. Okay. So depending on what you mean by your sentence, you can say either of those two words. Doesn't really matter. Also, mon is for masculine or feminine. Because Oh yeah. Uh, because well, in English, adjectives are kind of like are different, or possessive adjective at least are different. In French, for example, it's about like the kind of the object that you're qualifying. For example, it's like for example, this is like un crayon. It's masculine, donc c'est mon crayon. But in that case, c'est une bouteille. So it's c'est féminin. So you would say ma bouteille. In English, in that case, my is either for like it all depends on the person, on the subject. Here, like c'est ma bouteille, even though I am like a masculine gender. Okay. So in that case, ami is mon every time. Okay. Does that kind of
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
it was kind of a little bit far-fetched, but okay. Très bien. Bah tiens, Loga, tu fais quoi samedi? Are you with us, Loga? If your microphone's not working, you can try to type it in chat and I'll like say it out loud and we're going to correct it. Okay. Bethan, pour toi, tu fais quoi samedi?
Samedi matin,
Mhm.
d'étudier.
Ah,
Et
okay.
hein,
Samedi matin. So what did you say? You said like samedi matin, je vais étudier.
yeah, oui.
Okay. So be careful that you have to, if you're talking about the futur proche, so in an event that is in the close future, you would
Mhm.
say je vais, and then you have like the infinitive of your verb. So for example, je vais étudier. Oui.
Et je vais travailler
Ok, très bien.
jusqu'à
You said jusqu'à.
jusqu'à quoi?
Did you say jusqu'à?
Yeah, until the evening.
Oh, okay, jusqu'au soir. Okay. Because if we're looking at jusqu'à,
Mhm.
so it's you have a preposition here. If it's, for example, masculine, you would say jusqu'au. Okay, so that one is, for example, if it would be feminine, it's jusqu'à là. It's here, it's jusqu'au. Okay.
And is that dependent on the next word?
Yep. So in that case, it would be a noun. You said soir, so soir is a noun. So you would say jusqu'au soir, because soir est masculin. If you
Yeah.
say, like, for example, jusqu'à la nuit, it would be correct, because nuit is féminin. Okay. Et on va finir du coup avec toi, Bella. Tu fais quoi samedi?
Euh, samedi matin, je vais faire du sport. Et le soir, je vais au restaurant.
Tu vas au
Je vais
restaurant?
aller au restaurant.
Super. Ok, à quelle heure tu vas au restaurant?
Normalement, c'est 20 heures.
Normalement 20h. Ok, très
Oui.
bien. Super. Ok, très bien. Est-ce que quelqu'un a une question sur le futur proche, peut-être? Does anybody have a question about the use and the structure of the futur proche? Or does someone want to try and make another sentence to kind of practice the futur proche? Or does it seem clear to all of you? Oui, c'est clair? Okay, so pretty good. All right, so that was the last thing that we needed to talk about. So about the la routine, la vie quotidienne, so daily life. I think that you have like most of the tools and resources to talk about certain moments of the day, certain days of the week. Okay. What we're going to still be doing, however, is use, of course, le futur proche, because it's a very useful tense, because it permits you who may have not heard still about the future simple in French to talk about the future tense. So this is very useful because now you can talk both at the present and at the future. If you have a question like maybe about the past tenses in French, past tenses in French are much harder than you would see them, for example, in English. You have the same pattern. You have like the same thing with patterns and classifications in groups, but the pattern changes. So I don't think that we're going to see that soon or maybe a bit later. Okay. Once again, if you have a question about, well, the prepositions or about le futur proche, about anything that we have seen so far in the class or in the past few classes, you can ask me now so that the class may profit from this. You don't have any question about anything? No? Okay, très bien. Bon, super. So for once, I didn't finish late, so that's kind of a milestone for me. Donc j'espère que vous avez aimé le cours d'aujourd'hui. J'espère que vous avez appris des choses. I hope that you liked it, that you learned some new things too. If you have any questions for the time being, you can always write me an email, as always. Don't be shy about asking like some stuff that you may find stupid or whatever. I can help with that. It's part of the class and the course, okay? Donc, je vais vous souhaiter un bon week-end. Okay? I'm wishing you a happy weekend, okay? Un très bon week-end. J'espère que vous serez toutes là pour le cours de mardi. I hope that you will be there on Tuesday, okay? If you won't be there, just write me an email. It's just like, it helps me to kind of get to know about who's going to be present, okay? Donc, merci beaucoup d'être venu. Merci beaucoup. On se voit mardi, du coup. Ça marche?
Merci
Okay.
beaucoup.
We'll see each other on Tuesday. Merci beaucoup. Passez
Ouais.
une bonne journée, bon week-end et à mardi.
Bon week-end.
Au revoir, Johanna. Au revoir, Bethan. Au revoir, Loga. Au revoir, Bella.